Today we're going to talk about how to be a high impact SEO consultant, and if you have an SEO consultant, how to identify whether or not their recommendations actually are high impact as well. So I've been doing SEO consulting for over 10 years, started SEO consultant, Siege Media as an SEO focused content marketing agency with a consulting arm that's now over 100 plus people, 50 plus clients, some of the best brands that we're very lucky to have in the world. So hopefully we know a thing or two about SEO consulting that we can share with you to help you grow your own consulting practice or identify whether or not you have a great SEO consultant as well. If doing better SEO on either side of the equation is something that's important to you, make sure to jam that notification bell, hit subscribe, and we'll keep you up to date with more videos just like this. So the first thing that I think every SEO consultant should do is have a focus on making an impact rather than just fixing 404s. So as someone who's kind of seen work from multiple SEO consultants over the years, there is a kind of like thought process of some SEOs where they more so fix best practices rather than actually make an impact for the business. And what I mean by that is technically if you go to some random page on a website and you fix broken 404s, technically that might be SEO best practice. Similarly, adding meta description for pages 5,000 to 1,000 or 10,000 in your overall traffic list, technically SEO best practice, but that's not actually what moves the needle for that business. When you're thinking about paying someone and also prioritizing their expertise against that, a few things should be happening. One, the equation should be relative. So if you're paying them X money, hopefully the ROI is very clear. Why? Very often that's not going to be the case if you're doing things like fixing 404s or meta descriptions. On the other side of the equation, what you want to do is actually focus on pages that make an impact. So sometimes you want to go deeper on things that really move the needle rather than those overall best practices. And that's kind of where a more business mindset is in SEO as compared to I'm doing everything I learned in an SEO 101 beginner's playbook is the difference between a high impact consultant and one that eventually is no longer employed or hired as a contractor for that business. The second piece would be focusing on proactive rather than reactive recommendations. So I think consistently good SEO consulting will be bringing the client recommendations rather than waiting for them from the client. Bad SEO work I've seen is they'll field a lot of requests from the client, and when they do get those requests, never push back on them. The client expects you to be the expert rather than vice versa. So you want to be bringing those thought processes to them rather than vice versa. Because if you're not, that shows you're more of a commodity. You're more like an SEO analyst who's doing the nuts and bolts grunt work rather than bringing strategy to the table, which should be the goal of every single strategist. Additionally, proactivity means you're bringing ideas and thought processes to them in front of changes, in front of algorithm updates, rather than after them. In an ideal world, algorithm updates, even if it hit your client, is not any kind of shocker because any kind of thing you've mentioned that could be an issue for them in their traffic in the future has already been brought up. That's what good SEO consulting is. It's where the puck is going. It's being thoughtful in terms of qualitative things in the future. And if you feel things are all good and you're making micro changes on 404s and they still see a 50% hit in their traffic, you've probably failed your job as SEO consultant and aren't truly being proactive rather than reactive in those changes. Some additional ways you can be really high impact on a consistent basis as an SEO consultant, that's part of the go-to playbook, is really looking at the keywords that site is ranking for in the 6 to 30 range and making an iterative changes against that sorted by search volume or traffic value or CPC, etc. So what I mean by this is if you dive into Ahrefs and filter by these rankings, this is effectively low-hanging fruit that's also high impact. So if you can make those subtle changes that will get someone from 6 to 3 or page 2 to page 1 and rinse and repeat the UX changes, the internal linking, the external linking, all of that kind of add up to those changes, you're always making high impact rather than being focused on the smaller, less impactful pieces of the website that kind of add up over time. And in that same framework, one of the things that can come up and make sense is focusing on bigger site-wide changes. So those will surface page level changes, but as part of that, another thing you can look at are the wider changes that impact many pages. So instead of suggesting 4 pieces of content or 4 keywords to include on a page, you can instead go deeper on a set of pages or page templates. So say you're ranking for Texas car insurance and every state car insurance, you could suggest a template change that will impact 50 rather than simply one page as a whole. So if you're thinking about that and holistic changes that one change can make a wider impact, you'll be more impactful as an SEO consultant overall. Another piece that is increasingly important is thinking about UX. These changes, I think, are more and more part of the SEO consultant's playbook, especially as more and more sites get to best practice, or at least okay and technical best practice. So really the SEO consultant's job has become iterative in terms of being more UX focused on a day-to-day basis. And that's something that's less likely to get fixed immediately with these CMSs that exist, and kind of bring some decent best practice out of the gate within their installs that make that piece of the equation for an SEO many times less high impact. So if you're thinking about UX and making changes consistently, you're more likely to make changes that will create wins for the client. So our instruction and our thought process as SEOs, especially for sites that aren't millions of pages, is to focus more on UX and those site-wide template changes. And because of that, you'll make bigger impacts overall. Other things I love with SEO is backing up recommendations. Overall, there are a lot of great places to get recommendations from, whether it's Moz, Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, etc. Many other great consultants on the web. These places are great third-party consultation for evidence that your recommendation makes sense. So hopefully as an agency, you could also grow and point to other case studies that you've had. This is helpful for making arguments to make big site-wide changes that no client really should just make at surface level trust of you. So referencing a third-party website or a case study, with every recommendation you make will be more likely to actually create instructive change for that company. In addition, on top of that, you can also make arguments in terms of change in traffic value increase. So that's another recommendation as well. Is if you're trying to create a heavy lift, you should make that argument in terms of bottom line impact for that company. Instead of just saying change these 404s, you could say make this change on this calculator to move it further above the fold, lower the time to value. We believe this will incrementally increase the traffic value for this page by 100,000 per month. Obviously, the argument of spending $2,000 to make that change is very easy to make when you're putting in those terms or words and using evidence of other people ranking well that do those same things, or other changes you've made that have made those same impacts will help kind of push that through and make the change that you want for those search results. And finally, as SEOs, I think you should focus on the bottom funnel. We're a content marketing agency, so we definitely have an SEO consulting department that helps with a lot of these things. But for the SEO side of the equation, I think thinking about those bottom funnel pages are most likely to have high impact and make you more valuable overall. Content marketing side of the equation is super important for leading people down the funnel, but if you have finite time, and it's, I think, a part of that holistic strategy, we think of our content marketing team as top and middle, and our SEO team as bottom and site-wide, and content marketing is single page setups. And that's kind of that complementary setup that creates a high impact SEO consultant and helps you perform better for your clients. On the reverse side, my advice for people that hire SEO consultants that are listening to this is that you should look at them and ask yourselves, are you sending them a lot of things to dig into and do? Are they being reactive rather than proactive? Does it feel like the kind of changes they are making are SEO best practice playbook, or are they really business minded? If they're business minded and proactive, and also impressing you with the frequency and speed that they're communicating and how they communicate with you, more likely that you actually have a great consultant and someone that's going to lift that traffic month over month, year over year. So hopefully you like this video. I would love to hear what you think SEO consulting in a high performing way looks like. Please drop that in the comments, give us a thumbs up, hit that notification bell, and thanks for watching.